The next step is alignment. Now, alignment's probably not that interesting to you. It's more interesting to me as a teacher, okay? Because I'm like, you guys got, say my mean for my class was 90 this year, and last year it was 85, okay? So for me as a teacher, it helps me to be able to understand the difference between you. You're probably not so interested because you're only comparing yourselves with the people who you're going through with, because they're the people who you're fighting for to get into courses and so on, okay? So this is more for a teacher, but it's still important, okay? Because before, actually pre-2001, so not that it's relevant to you, but we had what was called norms-based assessment. And what that means is, after this process of moderation, they take an average, the Board of Studies stops, okay? Now, someone might land on, say, 95. But that 95 has no meaning with regard to 95 in a different year, okay? Because it's like, well, if all of you guys are smart, you might all get 95, right? And in another year, if they're all really poor, they might also all get 95, because that's the way the moderation works, okay? So what they do is, instead of going norms-based assessment, they have what's called standards-based. So here's what it looks like, okay? Suppose we have all of your scores, and they're all in a big sort of table. And you've got people who've scored like 99 and 98s and so on, all the way down, and maybe you've got someone who scored 50 down here, okay? Now here's the question I want you to answer. This number here, which I've gotten from this process, okay, what kind of skill level does it actually represent, right? So there's a group of people in the Board of Studies, and they're called judges. Big fancy name. And they're super experienced, and they understand the courses and their outcomes and the standard of what a student should be like. They understand it really well, okay? So what they'll do is they'll look at, say, what's the top number of people who should be, and this is language that's familiar to you, who should be, say, a band 6, okay? Now when you go into each course's syllabus, it says a band 6 student should be able to, do sophisticated language and blah, 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 blah. And it's meant to be objective for every year, okay? So it's like, okay, look, in 2013, we had this number of people who could demonstrate band 6 competence, okay? But maybe the person who was down here, who was the weakest person who still met these requirements, okay? Maybe they scored 70, okay? So you got 70 to 71, 80, etc., all the way up to 99, okay? But that's not band 6, according to the marks that you know, right? Band 6 should be 90 and above, right? So what happens is these get aligned to these scores, okay? Which obviously means these guys are going to get very tightly bunched together, okay? But if they all can meet band 6, right? Like if you have a really smart grade, okay? If they can meet that, they should get 90 to 100, because that's what band 6 means. And then, maybe the next group, these are the people who can do band 5, so they'll get scores between 80 and 90, and so on, okay? So this is the process of alignment, and it can work the other way as well. Suppose people from 99 to 70, you look at their bands and you're like, wait, none of them are band 6. This is a really dumb year. These guys are actually band 4, right? So that would mean that the top person, right? Because there's something in the water. Who knows? Okay. That person should get what? Band 4 would be 80, right? The top mark would be 80. Okay. So that's the process of alignment. So I can say, look, this year versus that year, this is how they're really performing. So now you know if you've got like a brother or sister who went through before you, right? And they got, say, 90. And you get 91. You are now justified in saying, I'm smarter than you, okay? Or if it goes the other way, then they're justified in saying they're smarter than you. Because now the numbers really mean something. They've been aligned in such a way to these objective standards so that people can say, yeah, a 90 really means this kind of level of performance, or a 95, or whatever, okay? All right, does that make sense? Yes? Right, let's do the last one. I need some more space, which is scaling. Like I said, this is what people usually think of when they think of the black box of what happens to your marks before you end up in an ATAR. Okay. So before I explain it, let me pose the problem to you. Okay. If you're trying to compare multiple different things, and they really are different, okay, how can you compare them fairly? So something I always wondered, I don't know why, just curious, I guess. Is, there's a lot of sports, like say, cricket, what else? Golf, Hockey is the same. Tennis. What's the American one? Baseball. Baseball. Okay. What's the common thing between all of these sports? They all involve the hitting of a small spherical object with basically a glorified stick, okay? So, and here's the weird thing though, okay? All of the balls are different. They're different in size and material and so on. And all of the sticks are different. They're all weird shapes, different lengths, different materials and so on, okay? So what if we were trying to compare them and say, well, which one is the hardest sport, okay? Well, what would you do? One way you could go about this is say, look, let's take all of you guys and make you do some kind of objective test, right? Now, if I'm trying to think about, which one is the hardest, okay? I might say maybe weightlifting. Let's do weightlifting as an objective test because that should test your strength in a sort of, I've got a nice number, it's a numerical sort of easy to measure and compare, okay? So I make all of you do the test, okay? And maybe it turns out, okay, that, cricketers, because, Australians are awesome, right? Cricketers consistently get the best weightlifting scores. So in this objective test, right, versus, I don't know, probably golfers, I guess, because, I don't know, just when I picture they're like kind of lean and old, yeah, right? I broke my back trying to lift this thing. So, okay, we might then conclude, right, cricket's the hardest sport because they're the strongest, right? And golf is the easiest sport, right? But you can probably see the problem with that, right? What's the problem? Golf is hard, right? But why is it hard? Here's the important thing, right? It's hard in a different way, right? So, the golfers, they lose, and after the results are published, they're like, this is ridiculous. It's not about just, raw strength. It should be about accuracy. You cricketers, you just have to hit it this far. Golfers are like, I can't even see where I'm hitting it, right? And there's this tiny thing, so accuracy should really be the objective test that we use, right? And then, the tennis players might disagree. They're like, no, it's not about strength or accuracy, it's about timing. If you ever played tennis properly, right, it's all about, like, the difference between hitting a ball well and hitting it poorly. It's like a split second. You hit it, if you swing too early, you'll just miss. If you swing too late, it's just going to go, skyrocketing into the air. So everyone's going to disagree about what this other test should be. Does that make sense? So this is a problem, okay? Now, there's another way to do it. Actually, there's many ways, but here's a better way to do it, okay? What you could do is you could get all these people from these 5 sports, right? And then put on the comedy channel or something like that. Make them all play each other's sports, okay? You see what this is going to do? They might all start playing each other's sports, and then it comes out that maybe it is the tennis players, okay? They consistently beat everyone at other sports, okay? The tennis players are better at cricket than the golfers or the hockey players or the baseballers and so on, okay? Obviously, you'd expect the cricketers to be best at cricket, but you can compare the rest, right? So if the tennis players can beat everyone at the other sports, and suppose, unfortunately, again, the golfers, they turn out to be terrible. They're not good at cricket, they're not good at hockey, and so on, okay? Then you might say, well, that's the measure I'm going to use. Tennis is clearly the hardest sport, because they're better at everyone else's sports, okay? So this is what UAC does with regard to subjects instead of sports, right? So let me try and give you a simple example. What are the most common subjects? Well, English is kind of mandatory, right? Let's go for maths. Chemistry is pretty popular here. Okay, now suppose you've got 2 students, okay? Let's call them, I don't know, say Chelsea and Daniel. That's 2 nice made-up names. You don't know any Chelsea. Anyway. And let's see what marks they get for each of the subjects, okay? Now before I put them down, let's suppose there's a 4th subject, okay? There's an other subject, which they don't have in common. And I'm trying to determine which subject of these is harder and I should give more weighting to, okay? So suppose, Sudoku gets introduced as an HSC subject, right? And target, do you know what target is? That's the one where there's, it's a grid, 3 by 3, and there are 9 letters, okay? And you've got to go like, I don't know, something like I don't know, that's not going to work. But anyway, so there's number one, there's a 9-letter word that exists that uses all the letters, okay? And then secondly, you have to think of as many words as you can of any length, but they all have to have the middle letter, so hence target, okay? So it's like, how many can you get, right? Now, suppose in the final Sudoku exam and final target exam, both of them score 95. But here's my problem. I don't know what the 95s mean. Is target really hard and Sudoku really easy, or are they about the same? How do I judge, right? So what I'll do is I'll look at all the other sports. Does this make sense? Okay. So suppose Chelsea just blows everything away, right? You know, she gets really great marks across all her other subjects. Daniel, unfortunately, has a bad day or a bad year or something, right? And he just really burns. He's like, I tried, okay, right? But that's how he does. Now, what would you conclude, okay? One conclusion you could draw is that, well, look, they both got 95, right? But this student clearly has got brains, right? Whereas this one is not the sharpest tool in the shed and yet still scored 95 in this subject, right? So one conclusion you could draw is, this can't be that hard. Like, however hard it is to get 95, you know, if a student of this caliber can get 95, then, you know, it can't be that hard, right? So I would judge target as an easier subject, Sudoku is harder, and as a board which is sort of interested in putting together an overall ranking, I would weight this less, okay? Now, to be fair, that's not the only plausible explanation for why this is, okay? Maybe it's just that Daniel's talents just don't lie in these, you know, these mainstream subjects. He's a hipster of the HSC, so he's just a prodigy at target, and he really is smart, and it really is a hard subject. He's just awesome at it, okay? Now that is a plausible explanation, but as an explanation for hundreds or thousands of students, that starts to become less valid, right? Because if you've got hundreds and thousands of students, and they're consistently doing poorly but doing well in this subject, it looks more likely that, you know, it's not just going to be these 3 subjects, it's going to be a whole range. It's going to be, you know, dozens of sports that, wow, these guys are really bad at, right? So when you've got a large candidature, then the judgment that I just made, based on how they do in other subjects, starts to become more reliable. Okay? So what will happen is, this 95 might get scaled to a 95, whereas this 95 might get scaled to a 70. Okay? And then that gets added up, the 10 best units, and you'll get a mark out of 500. They call the aggregate. And then they produce a ranking out of it, which of course, I'm not going to deal with rankings at all, because that's even weirder. And it's like, why should the person who comes first, like, what should we call their ranking? I know, let's call it 99.95, because that sounds like first to me. That seems weird. I don't know why they've done rankings like that, but anyway. I guess people associate big numbers with good. Big equals good. 99.95 equals first. Anyway. So that's how moderation, alignment, and scaling basically works. And even though it's quite complicated, when you think about the problems that have to be dealt with, it's quite clever, right? Like, who thought these things up? It's well, actually, a lot of people thought them up. But yeah, a lot of wisdom and insight went into this process, okay? So I think if there's one takeaway from all of this, apart from just keep working hard, right? It's mainly from this one. Is it this one? No, it's this one. Which is that if the Board of Studies does take into account how good your school is as a whole, and then as an individual bases your performance on that 50%, okay? It's in your interest to have your entire school be really, really strong, okay? So in the weeks to come, I hope you guys work really well together. You know, you've got 2 weeks. I don't know about you, but when I'm alone, my threshold for I don't feel like working, so therefore I will, you know, eat, sleep, YouTube, whatever, right? My threshold's really low when I'm by myself, whereas when I'm in a room filled with other people and they're all, you know, writing, I get up and then someone, you know, one or many people will say, sit your ass down and get back to your paper, okay? So work together, right? And the stronger our school is, the better everyone will perform.